Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting digitally and lively. I don't know about live, but lively on digital platforms here on Zoom. Hopefully, it'll be posted to Facebook and also on the Yishai Fleisher Show, which is the Land of Israel Network. And I want to welcome Rabbi Mike Feuer. Rabbi Mike, shalom and welcome.
Shalom, Yishai. We're always digital, man. Except we're usually live with each other.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference is that we're in the Zoom in phase of the show.
I'm calling it the Zoomiverse.
The Zoomiverse. That's a good name.
It's a little bit awkward, but I'm trying to claim that as a patent.
That's pretty good. I wrote in my article that I wrote this week that we live in an age where we're all in this, and you call it now Zoomiverse, that we also have to sometimes know how to zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like it becomes it. There were some people who wrote in and they recognized the Max Headroom
reference,
and it's like it really is that we're in this Max Headroom reference mode.
Well, I mean, are you wearing polka dot pajama bottoms like I am right now, and no one ever know?
Actually, speaking of that, I do think that getting dressed in normal clothes is an important part of this. Some of my friends are like waking up at 10 in the morning and stuff like that. And some of them claim that actually working late at night is productive time because the kids are off. But for me, I'm trying to get up rather early, not super early, but rather early, pray at a regular time, and really as much as possible, keep to certain confines of routine, so that it doesn't just kind of blow out of any kind of normative life.
Maintaining those points of reference, I think, are very hard. They're very important in a world where so much of the difficulty I see, and I'm doing a lot of counseling right now, so much of the difficulty I see is people losing their frames of reference. It's something that I learned the hard way, as I'm sure that you did, the loss of my father, is that we all have this very precious psychological assumption, which is an illusion, but an important one, which I call the normative assumption. The people that I always love will always be there. The world that I know will stay the way it is. And that's important because you can't wake up every morning in crisis. At the same time, it's an illusion. And a lot of people are discovering that on a scale right now that they didn't expect.
Yeah. And yet there's another way to understand that, which is make it very much not illusory. One of the things I've held on to is Rabbi Shlomo Katz, who's on this network. He has a shacharit prayer at 8 a.m. on Zoom. I go to that, and I'm like, I have to be at Minyan at 8. And then Radio Kol Chai, which is an Israeli, more Sephardi radio station.
Yosef.
Right. I get tired of American Ashkenazi stuff. I can only take it so much, and then suddenly it's like a little ding goes off, and I'm like, I can't do it. I need my more
fat. Too much chicken fat.
Yeah, I can't take Ashkenazi stuff too much. It's just and on top of that, there's American Ashkenazi, which is very Ashkenazi. I can't deal with it too much. So I could deal with it in the morning, but then in the afternoon, my phone goes off at 2:10 because at 2:15 there is mincha on Radio Kol Chai.
Really?
Yes, and then at 7 and then at 8:45 there is Ma'ariv on Radio Kol Chai, and it's like a Sephardi Ma'ariv. Yeah. They actually are one
Ma'ariv,
of the.
It's Ma'ariv.
Ma'ariv, Tfilat Aravit, right?
Yeah.
And it's much more Sephardi style, and I like it, and it just does it for me.
You'll like this. We've been doing for Mincha Ma'ariv here.
What?
You've been to my place plenty of times. You lived in Ma'ale Adumim, so all of our porches in this section of the neighborhood don't face each other. They all face out toward Yerushalayim, so we can see each other. There's actually one of my neighbors wrote to the Rav of the neighborhood of how do we actually make a proper minyan together if we're separated on the porches, and he came up with the parameters. So at 6 o'clock and 7:30 every night, and on Friday nights we've been doing Kabbalat Shabbat and Ma'ariv together, like a proper live minyan where we're all dispersed and you can hear. It's awesome. You hear echo down the valley there, Baruch Hu, and everybody's out on their porches just shouting with this core minyan that's close enough to each other to actually be a proper minyan. It's been a fantastic experience, actually.
Yeah, and people were doing minyanim on the street and all kinds of stuff like that. Here on my street, we did it on the street. But then there's been an effort to crack down on that, to really distance people.
Rightly so, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And Rav Kanievsky, who's considered one of the Gedolei Ador in the Haredi world especially, issued a great Haredi-style psak where he said, anybody who davens in a minyan is a rodef.
Yes.
Okay, a rodef is a pursuer, like a deadly pursuer. I just thought it was very, it made me laugh. It was just like, and it's true. You are a deadly pursuer if you're carrying the virus or you're spreading it. It could be deadly. And that's another thing that happened since we last spoke. My wife's great uncle passed away from coronavirus, 77 years old, and
that's actually pretty young.
Oh yeah, he was fine. This thing knocked him out, and I was at a Zoom Shiva in the Zoomiverse yesterday.
I have not had the privilege or necessity of doing that yet.
Yeah.
So it's a shame what happened, but the way the world is going.
Yeah, like it brought it home, and I was, in a sense, in quotes, glad that something had struck me closer to home, so that I would feel the pain of others.
Yeah.
And understand how real it all is.
I think
And that's exactly what happened. Another thing that's of course the big challenge of our time is having the kids at home. I told a friend of mine that one of my main goals through this period and process is that the children will have great memories from this time.
Yeah.
I want them to be like, this was crazy, this was hard, but it was a sweet time with our parents and our siblings.
Yeah.
I want them to remember it that way. And so that's another personal goal. And right before we started the show, we were starting to talk about getting ready for the Pesach Seder, which this year may very well not include family members. I saw a minister, Gilad Erdan, yesterday saying, look, I'm not having my mom and dad over. So there is, tell us a little bit, Rabbi Mike Feuer, about the Seder and how you think that this year's Seder should be prepared for.
Sure. Before I do, I just want to put a finger on the importance of what you said before, which is the goals. I mean, whatever the goals are, this is a time where everybody needs to take some night, sit down by yourself, with your spouse, with whoever you're with, and set very specific goals.
Right.
In addition to the sort of adherence to the routine, which I support you in 100%, this is not an opportunity to waste. Right? And goals help keep us focused, and they help us marshal the potential which actually exists. We spoke about it last week, the crisis-opportunity, right? This crisis, which is an opportunity. And that, I think, is half my answer already to your question about Seder, right? Seder is the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, going out from Egypt. But many people are familiar with the fact that we also speak of it as a Yetziat Mina Mitzrayim, right? Coming out of the narrow places. Like Mitzrayim is Egypt, but the word Mitzrayim in Hebrew can be read as Mitzrayim, as narrow places. And even the structure of the Haggadah is mignut l'shvach, right? That's the fundamental structure, from a state of disgrace to an state of praise. That's why we start with the telling of the slavery and we end with singing Hallel. So the opportunity which is there, actually, ironically, or I don't know, cosmically, how you want to think about it, is that the very difficulty you're naming is a tremendous opportunity to experience Seder on a deeper level, personally. Whatever the difficulty is, whether it's for one person that their parents won't be there, another person that they're having difficulties being at home with the family all week, another person's going to be alone. Doing Seder alone. And the Mishnah actually talks about, if you're alone, you ask yourself questions and you answer. You don't just read it. There needs to be some level of engagement. All those difficult financial difficulties people are feeling right now, health difficulties, obviously, all these things are pressure, which either can simply constrain you, or they can become, just like Egypt, the kur barzel. They can become a crucible. But there's a potential for embracing difficulty as a crucible for change. But in order to do that, you have to have goals. You have to know who you want to be, at least on some level, when you come out. And you also have to accept the fact that this difficulty is real. It comes to me from God. I can't ask why. All I can ask is, what do I do with it? Asking why, in my experience, does not lead anywhere. And if it does, it doesn't lead anywhere good. But asking what I can do with it, how do I move through this? What's the potential that I can? So it's empowering, it's engaging. And I really want to emphasize what I'm saying, your personal experience of the Seder. I'm not necessarily talking about your ability to pull off a good Seder for the kids or whoever's with you. Your personal experience of wow, this is difficult. This is difficult. who am I going to be when I get through this difficulty? And that sense of, like a lot of us are reading Tehillim right now. I'm imagining you're probably doing it more than often. Like one of the classic Tehillim we say, right? Is mina metza karatika. Right? It's in Hallel, right? From the narrow places is where I call out to God. Anani b'merchavya, right? And God has answered me in that broadness. And that's really the structure of the Seder every year. It's just that this year, many of us are feeling that constraint on a much more fundamental level. And I see it as an opportunity. Not an easy one.
It certainly is an opportunity, but one that's, usually you want to, mentally prepare for the Seder and maybe what you're pointing to is that this year, it's not as much of a pageantry as much as a real effort to come out of a certain constriction that is very real. And so what you're basically saying is, no, we're in a real Egyptian servitude. Try to exit us through that.
I mean, we talk about in the halachic discourse the Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Lidorot. Right, there was what they actually did in Egypt on the night of the Exodus, and then what we've done since then. And what you just said is very nice. Is on some level we're a little bit, just a drop more in Pesach Mitzrayim than we've ever been. There's literally
maybe two drops.
There's literally a plague, stalking the land. Right. And we are shoved inside our houses. I'm not recommending that anyone paint their doorposts with blood, but that type of experience of I'm actually trapped right now.
Right.
And only God's going to save us.
That's right.
And even if God comes in the form of some wonderful person that comes with a vaccine, or some sort of a government ministry that figures out how to help me with my financial problems, I'm not looking for the miraculous like we had then, although it is still possible. Nevertheless, I think we need to embrace it on that level, that we are 2 drops into actually Pesach Mitzrayim.
So a very good friend of mine, Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, who is an incredibly talented educator.
At Eretz Tzvi.
Leva Torah.
Yeah, I know. He's a great guy. I didn't know
he's a great guy. Well, I went to high school with him, and we were both.
Next time you speak to him, tell him I say hi.
Yeah, we were punky guys before we became. And the more surprising element is that he was a punk.
Yeah, he's such a sweet guy.
And he listens to the show, which is a great honor. But he asked me about my relationship to the Mashiach type doctrine, and I always kind of I shy away one notch, not a lot of notches, but one notch away from cataclysmic / messianic thinking, especially in these kind of times.
Oh yeah, and a lot out there.
And people, right? And I just. It's just not my thing. It's not me. I just don't. I cringe at it somehow, and yet at the same time, I keep my almost mandated belief in a Messiah. But I believe, but right, it's mandated, and I believe in the mandate. Meaning to say, okay, there are things that I don't understand, and I don't have to understand them, and I accept them because they're bigger than me and my limited mind. Right, my limited mind's not catching this one as much, but the thing is that I believe in a messianic process. Now forget the dogma which I accept. I mean, I accept the rites and the rituals and belief systems of the dogma, fine. But on a more internal level, if you told me the third temple, I get that. If you told me that this coronavirus era is about moving the process forward. And I want to talk about that with you in a second, but sure. I can understand that. But some kind of cataclysmic turnaround through this. It's just, it doesn't talk to me. Is that fair enough? It's it doesn't talk to me. I'm more there were plagues, by the way. World War I was. There were a lot of Jews kicked out of this land by the Turks. All the Russian citizens.
Almost all of them.
Right. And then you had bad plagues, and you had all kinds of stuff. And all of it was the Holocaust, and all of it was in a process of bringing the Jewish people back home and establishing the country. And I believe that this thing will have that. But does my mind easily go towards some kind of hocus, some kind of I
call it the whiz-bang Mashiach.
Whiz-bang Mashiach. Okay, fine.
It's And
tornado Mashiach, you know?
yeah, can I respond to you, or you're not done yet?
Please. I just,
This is a very
because
important
Rabbi Mo,
question.
so the question Rabbi Mo was like, why do you have a hard time with that? You know, let me like, what keeps you from having a
So
faith
I'll
that
hold
there's
back on my answer
something?
to that question, because I actually, at this point, think I know you decently. You know, we're all a mystery to each other. And
That's
it doesn't
right.
surprise me at all what you're saying. And I support you in it. And in order to like introduce what I mean is that I want to use a distinction that the great scholar of Jewish mysticism, Gershom Shalom, used. You know, he was the first, if people aren't familiar, the first person to bring the tools of academic study to the history of the mystical texts within Judaism, and therefore a deep engagement with the Messianic idea, because of course the Messianic idea plays a central role in almost all of the mystical texts we have. Right, and he makes a very important distinction between what I would call Messianic hope and Messianic fervor. And he says, you know, hope is, of course, the necessary ingredient of life. And when we tie hope to Mashiach, part of that is, as you noted, is this deep belief that we have as Jews that what is does not define what will be. That's my definition of hope.
Mm-hmm.
What is does not define what will be, because what is a product of my ability to grasp and comprehend. And as a Jew, I understand God's way bigger than that. So therefore, like, yeah, Mashiach, I have hope. Even though, think about it, by the way, it's a difficult time we're having right now. And the thought of having a Seder right now is challenging to a lot of people. Would you stand against the Inquisition? How about the Warsaw Ghetto? Like, let's not forget, they had a full-on Seder with whatever food they could scrape together in the Warsaw Ghetto. Not that I want to make people feel bad about their difficulty. It's not my point. My point is that zoom out also needs to include the perspective of like, yeah, Avanu et Paro, navor gam et zeh, as we say here in Israel. We got through Pharaoh. We'll get through this. It's going to be difficult, and is it? So, but hope is a critical ingredient for that. And then the idea that Mashiach, yeah, like you said, it's above my pay grade. People ask me like, Mashiach, that's usually my answer. I'm like, that's above my pay grade. Yeah, I'm in. But he points out that when it becomes fervor, in many ways, it's actually a loss of hope. Mashiach now.
Right.
Yeah, now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a loss of hope, which involves an abandoning of agency. Because and this is where I'll get to you personally, your relationship to Mashiach is one that gives you agency. I don't really understand the big picture, but I still feel empowered to do my part, to push forward the process, to take active engagement, because I know I don't have to do it all. So therefore, what I do is meaningful because there's a larger picture. As soon as it's Mashiach now, the whiz-bang tornado, like you said, well, then I could just sit back, the temple will fall from the sky.
Right. He's
And
rescuing you. He's working for you. He's rescuing your problems instead of you working for him.
This is anathema. It is the exact opposite of everything that the Torah teaches us, that your actions matter, that God wants you to be a partner in creation. I understand why people go there, but Shalom points out, historically speaking, and I would, in humility, affirm his analysis that every time Messianic fervor takes over, it's disastrous.
Right.
It's disastrous. And because it's a loss of hope, because it's a loss of a sense of agency, and it usually leads to cataclysmic jumping on the bandwagon, whether it's Shabtai Tzvi, whether, with all due respect to our Christian listeners, whether it's Jesus of Nazareth. Like, meaning there is that sense of we lose faith in the truth of the Torah, which is your actions matter. God has given us guidance on how to act. And if you can't see the end of the process, that's where hope comes in, right? Mm-hmm. And that makes perfect sense to me as someone who has dedicated his entire life to pushing that process forward in your family, in your community, in the national level. That type of messianic thinking cuts against the grain of everything you are.
Right.
And so
exactly, and you've put it into excellent words, excellent, and that's exactly right. Like, I'm always like, and I had a different way of saying it, but I like yours better. But just to elucidate it from the other side, I say to people like, I prefer to work for Mashiach rather than he work for me.
Yes.
Like, he's not there to he's not there to work out my problem. Yeah, exactly. And I don't like that, and I always feel that there's an element of idolatry, but you put it in a different way, which is an element of helplessness or hopelessness. I like that very much, and that's exactly right. And so, like, do I want to see this process, lead to something great? Absolutely.
Of course.
Right. But like, do I look out the window and I'm like, No,
the key is this. The question is, what are we doing inside our homes right now in order to actually use this situation to forward the process? But we can't just, and it's true that there are scales above us and that God has a plan. I'm not questioning that. My point is that that's above our pay grade. All we are qualified to do right now is figure out, how can I use this situation to push the process forward? I'm in my own life, in my family, on the national scale if you have the merit to work on that scale. But to think that everything's going to be solved from without, and all we have to do is sit here with folded hands, is, I think, to misunderstand the entire structure of the Torah, if I could be so bold, you know? Very
good. I want to talk for a second about the Realpolitik of what's going on right now, just for a few seconds.
Sure.
I see some concerning phenomena on the horizon, like a dark cloud coming. And I may be right or I may be wrong. This dark cloud may totally pass us, and there may be. And one thing, people sometimes ask me for predictions these days. They're like, "What was your prediction?" I'm like, we're in the third election cycle. I couldn't predict 2 or 3, and there's a coronavirus out there shutting down the world. We're out of the realm of predictions.
Yes.
There are no models for this one, okay?
No.
You know what I mean? So, but on the other hand, I'm seeing some phenomena that I'm concerned about. One is a rise of, I'm not usually one to comment about anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is a phenomenon that's always there, and Jews have to know it, and it comes from jealousy, and it comes from ignorance, and it comes from replacement, which is jealousy. But I see another old school anti-Semitism rearing its head, which is the Jews have brought the plague.
Yeah, that's
now, there's
really
old
school.
It's old school. There's only one problem with that, which is that it is appearing like places like New York, Jews have it a lot.
Yeah. And our behavior is non-compliant often.
Well, let's say that initially the non-compliance really, first thing it comes from that the Jewish religion and Jewish people are highly social and highly cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
They are highly social and highly cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Which seems like actually could be a conflict, but no, Jews manage to do both of those things. They manage to fly around a lot, but when they fly to the next place, they look for the minion. Right. So that's one. So there's this kind of anti-Semitism.
Can I throw something in that? And what I meant by non-compliant is that Ben Gurion has a fantastic, like pretty famous statement when he worries about the ability of the Jews to form a social society, like a civil society, because he says that for 2,000 years, law has been something which we need to overcome. I mean, for much of European history, to be Jewish was more or less illegal. And so therefore, our whole relationship to state power and law was to do the workaround. And it's an unfortunate reality that persists within our society, within American society, that non-compliance is problematic.
Yeah, and the folks that carry that mental unconscious tendency are the Ultraorthodox.
Of course, because they're the most deeply immersed in traditional Jewish thinking.
Right, and also they are not the receivers of the more modern sense that that we're part of that they have not. They're still non-compliant. They in fact they sometimes even enjoy, in order to fulfill the need for non-compliance, they will paint the state of Israel as that a Polish, lord.
What I meant by immersed in traditional thought is that a core element of Jewish identity as it developed through exile was we are not part of society. We stand outside. And it served us well in many, many cases.
It's also an excellent educational thing for the children. Hey, children, we're in this barrier outside of the bad guys, and we're here, the good guys.
Yep.
And when you're still dressed like that and you still feel that way, you actually need to paint a target on somebody to be that that Paritz, that czar, whatever it is. And so you'll actually hear, famously when they go into by the way, it's very important for us to say, very important caveat, we're talking about a small segment of the ultra-Orthodox society. Sure. They just happen to be highly visible also for purposes of the other side.
They're great propaganda.
Right. People on the other side want to say, look at the ultra-Orthodox
model within our own society. That the Haredi world are the Jews of Israeli society in that sense.
Right. So hold on one second.
Yeah.
I need the internet line as much as possible open. Thanks. Sorry about that interruption.
That's all right. Your face froze in the most beautiful smile right there.
Internet is it's a commodity today.
We're all struggling
Right,
with
the
bandwidth, man.
Bandwidth, baby.
With the bandwidth. In every sense of the term.
Yeah.
So you're saying that, so you're not one usually to talk about anti-Semitism, but
I see it out there, and I see also that American Jewry is going to go through a struggle where I think that I'm not making this prediction, but I can see I can voice a concern that says we very well may see a degrading of American Jewry to the point that it really is not going to return. Like, as we say, it didn't return to pre-war strength. It will not return to pre-COVID-19 strength.
And what worries me about that is that there's a fracture line that is being pushed that you already identified, which is that it further separates between traditional Orthodox Jewry and liberal American Jewry.
Yeah.
You know, because you're going to be forced to choose sides. Oh, I'm not part of that.
Right.
You know, I agree with you. The predictions are impossible, but that trend is definitely there. It was there before with the split around Israel, but this is much more visceral. Much more visceral. Now,
there's another trend that's concerning me, is everybody's talking today about the ultra-Orthodox and how they're getting sick, but I've got a fear that soon the virus is going to come to places like Gaza. Yes. And if it goes into Gaza strong, so we're going to have two problems. First, you're going to have members of the international community putting a lot of pressure on Israel saying, look what you've allowed to happen. These guys are your prisoners.
Right.
They're prisoners, and you've allowed them to get sick, and it's a killing machine, so it's a great blood libel. It combines almost – right, it's already happening, but I'm saying – right, around the margins. But if we see a big phenomena of a sickness, a lot of people are going to be like, Israel, this is your fault. You have to take care of them. Now, on the same side – what we're going to see in Israel is a lot of backlash, and this is not going to come necessarily from the so-called right wing, but a lot of times from the left wing, where they're going to say, hey, we need these beds, we need these ventilators, we need this money, and we shouldn't be giving it to the Gazans who have been shooting rockets at us and our enemies and our jihadists and Hamasnikim. We don't need to support them at all. So why are you giving them one penny to deal with them?
Yeah.
So what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of pressure. Help them, right? A lot of people saying, "Don't help them," and
we can't. It's not even just
we can't help them. That's right. That's right. We can't.
That's the Realpolitik elements. Like, folks, they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on rockets and tunnels, and like they could have built hospitals and roads and schools. Yeah, okay, we're not innocent in the full sense, but yeah, I hear it. There's a third alternative here, by the way.
Yeah.
I've already seen the phrase. I should have did a screenshot where I saw it, which is people are already, the idea has already been floated of a medical annexation. More here in Yudan Shomron than in Gaza, because Gaza is a thing unto itself, but a sense that, like, epidemiologically speaking, we're one society.
Right. We're one society. And also we're economically, at the end of the day, one society also. Let's just be real about it. I even heard a left-leaning journalist yesterday say, from the river to the sea, forget the two-state solution discourse, we're really taking care. There's only one country that is medically taking care of the situation.
Yes. And so potentially it could be a positive. But that would take a much more visionary, proactive stance than we've been willing to take. Gaza is a particular mess. You know, personally, I saw somebody point out that the port and airport of El Arish is 30 miles from Gaza, from that Egyptian border, lest we forget that Egypt also has a border that they keep closed, right? And that if you want to try to manage Gaza, it's a much more logical equation than going into Israel, where there's such sort of animosity and, you know, but that, you know, we all understand why.
So medical annexation, that's a very interesting terminology. So those are some of the, you know, issues that I'm kind of seeing. I want to shift gears into one more thing. We are actually coming up on a semi-holiday, on a minor holiday, which is almost never observed. Almost never observed. It's actually a great holiday of redemption, connected to the Passover holiday in two ways, and that is the 10th of Nisan.
Yes.
10th of Nisan has in it two interesting things. One, it's the day where the Jews in Egypt took in the goat. They brought in the goat, and that goat, it was a.
If you think your house feels small right now, tie a goat to your bed for the next 10 days.
the tying a goat to your bed was a way to. By the way, I don't have a watch on me. I didn't put it on, and so you're. Please look at the time and make sure that you're in good instead.
I'm watching it. Don't worry.
Okay, good. So the 10th, the Jews brought in this goat, and that was a symbol of a rebellion, an anti-authority political theater act, which showed that they're no longer going to be bound by the idolatry of Egypt. They're not going to believe. They're going to slaughter it.
Your God.
Yeah, we're going to eat your God. We eat your God, and that's what I would call the show today. We eat your God.
Okay, let's do it, man.
Yeah, we eat your God, and you know, okay. There's a lot of stuff there about eating gods, and then.
Yeah. Let's just let it go. Roll it.
Okay.
You want me to hit pause?
No, it's okay. I was just thinking about having matzah.
Yes. There was all there. I saw it coming, man. You want to just let it out, or you want to let it go?
Let's keep going.
All right, thank you.
And then at the same time, what people don't know so much is that the 10th of Nisan was also the day that 40 years later, Joshua would cross the river into the land of Israel.
Yep.
10th of Nisan, right?
Was it actually on Yud Nisan? I believe you
Yud
say it was, and if it wasn't Bo B'Yom, then it certainly is this time. Followed by mass circumcision, lest we forget.
Right, mass circumcision. Sheesh, that was a bloody mess.
I actually live in Ma'ale Adumim, right? We're like right up the road from Gilgal.
Is that where they did it?
It was at Gilgal, yeah. God rolled back the sin of Egypt. That was it.
That's a good tip. Anyway, what I wanted to say was that this day, therefore, is now every year. I have some friends who wanted to make this into like a holiday here in Israel, the 10th of Nisan, and I told them every year, like, I'm like, you can't do it. It's just not gonna work.
Yes, and we're all scrubbing our ovens, man.
We're scrubbing our ovens, and the kids are like getting ready
at home.
It's not gonna happen, right? There's no school, exactly.
They're not in school, right?
But this year, gosh, we could celebrate it a little bit more. And if you think about it, it's really a double day of redemption. It's like, and both of them are, how do we say it in Judaism? Hechsher mitzvah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like bringing the goat. Yeah. Right. It paves the way for the Paschal sacrifice, but you took the act.
So, I mean, in reality.
And going to the land of Israel, you're like, I'm going in. I'm going into the land of Israel.
Open the gates.
Open the gates. I'm starting the whole game right now.
In reality, it does really exist in popular practice in Shabbat HaGadol.
Right.
Right. Meaning this coming Shabbat, just in a few days, is called Shabbat HaGadol. It's one of the two Shabbatot that hold a sort of a critical, independent place in the calendar, together with Shabbat Shuvah, right, before Yom Kippur. Although obviously they're much broader, there's a notion that you find a lot in Chassidut that the light of a particular Chag, which is coming, actually comes into the world on the Shabbat before. Right, so like that's that Hechsher mitzvah, that the gates, so to speak, open. And even if we weren't going to create a new practice, I think it behooves us, like you're pointing out, to really spend Shabbat HaGadol. The custom, by the way, in Shabbat HaGadol is to get out the Haggadah and look it through.
Right.
I think
to hear a rabbi's like speech.
Yeah. Well, this year we'll be spared that. But
you could use this show as your Shabbat Haggadah drasha on Friday. You could listen to it, okay?
Yeah, if you like, I will speak pointlessly for 30 minutes about abstruse concepts that mean nothing to you in the middle of services, and I'll send you a recording of it later. You can play it tonight. I actually got in a little bit of trouble, and I shouted that out on Friday night the other day. It was like, well, nobody heard me except for my downstairs neighbor. I was like, and now I'll speak about nothing for 15 minutes.
That's dirty laundry that you should not be airing. Okay?
I'm sorry, I had an issue there, but my point is that this is the time, and I encourage everyone, even just 5 minutes, which might be a lot for many of us with kids and the things, just take 5 minutes and sit alone quietly and ask yourself, what's coming into the world through me right now that can actually come out in Pesach? Because Leil Seder, we speak about in the mystic tradition as mochen de gadlut, right? It's the greatest consciousness that you are capable of, a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Which means it's bigger than you can hold right now, because God willing, I may have a stream, we're all going to grow and expand. But it's the greatest consciousness that you're capable of that comes available on Friday, on Leil Seder, which means that that light is already shining on Shabbat. Give yourself 5 minutes to just think big.
Yeah. Now, I want you to know that one of the dark little secrets that I have inside, and my wife hates it when I talk about this, so I'll do that now, is that for me, Pesach night, I find it to be the Seder to be a strange document. And every year I find myself being like coming to something that I don't quite understand. And if I was the rabbis and I was going to write the Seder Haggadah, I would just say, start from the beginning of Shmot and read till B'Shalach, and you're great. And you're great. You're going to get the story. You're going to get the plagues, and you're just going to get the whole gig of what this night's about. The Seder is nothing like that. It is an unusual text,
Much more
filled with It's filled with all kinds of images that you don't know from the rest of the year. You never heard of them the rest of the year. 4 sons, 4 questions, 4 cups of wine. You don't know where this stuff is coming from, really.
Yeah.
And it's
story of people telling the story.
Right. And if you're rabbis telling the story, and if you're like a text-based person like myself, where like the text is very kind of meaningful to you, you're like, think to yourself, wait a minute, why'd you stick this stuff in? And I used to be bugged by it, bothered by it. But really, I've heard a few times in the different mystical texts that the author of the kind of author of the base text of the Haggadah is Eliyahu Hanavi, is Elijah the prophet. Yes. And if you open up what's it called? Not Pirkei Eliyahu. What's it called?
What Eliyahu? Tana Eliyahu.
Tana de Eliyahu.
Yeah.
If you open it up, it's actually similar in its style.
It's certainly not linear.
Right, and it's similar. It's just a similar language, similar. And I'm like, I could buy that now. And the Haggadah is, if you the way I understand it is, this is a smashing together in the tightest, most compact form of all of Judaism. This is how we think. This is, if I had one night where I can encapsulate the whole thing and give it to my kid, put it down his throat, have him swallow it, and then give him a present to make him smile. If I could give him all of Judaism in one, like, very encapsulated, this is how we think, and this is how we look at things, this is how we look at verses, and here's the before life, and here's our life, and the afterlife, here's, how we understand verses. If we have a verse over here that says that's a hand, then it's times, then a finger, here it makes it times 5. You're like, yes. You're like, this is the essence of Judaism in one night. And Elijah comes in and he kind of checks up on you and he says,
yeah.
Are you doing your thing? Are you doing your thing? So that's how I've come to understand the Haggadah. It's almost like a mystical text coming to you from a heavenly source, not a very human source, kind of more heavenly source, and coming to you and saying, okay, here's the matzah, and with the matzah, eat this faith. Eat this. These are the core beliefs. And eat this, ingest this tonight. Drink a little wine so you can be a little tipsy, so it gets into your subconscious.
A little, I mean, 4 cups is more than a little.
4 cups, and you probably drink full wine, right? Is that you?
No question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everyone bevat achat.
Right. You drain it. You drain it. As we say in Russian, pei dadna. Drink to the bottom. Right. Pei dadna. Okay. So that's how I deal with it. And I wanted to kind of ask you how you deal with the Haggadah text, which is.
Listen, first of all, what you said is very beautiful in the sense that, like, I almost got this image of it. It's like a DNA,
right?
That you're handing over, and therefore, like, if I showed you the DNA of a oak tree, you would never be able to picture the grandeur of its form,
right?
So to me, in the simple sense, and I just want to say we got about a 5-minute warning here. In the simple sense that Leil Seder is the night that we actually enter into the story. So much of the challenge of being a Jew is that we stand outside even from our own story. We read the text, we pray. So maybe I have a intimate personal relationship with God. Maybe I don't. Maybe I have an intimate personal relationship with Am Yisrael in our historical experience. Maybe I don't. But it's hard to feel like that I'm actually living in the same drama that Moshe Rabbeinu and Bnei Israel who went through the sea are in the same story. And this is the night of installing ourselves into the story. It's why, of course, that aside from the mystic tradition, from a literary standpoint, the base text of the Haggadah is are the Mishnayot in the 10th chapter of Pesachim, right? And if you look, that sort of famous phrase that everyone is obligated in every generation to see themselves as if they came out of Egypt, which comes right before Hallel. Meaning, seeing yourself as coming out from Egypt is not telling the story, and I hear you, but reading the book of Shemot, it's not what it is. It's singing. Why? Because, and by the way, there's no blessing. It's the only Hallel we say through, as Ashkenazim, is the only Hallel we say through the whole year where you don't say a blessing. One of the explanations I've heard to me that encapsulates this idea is because it's the only time it's not a ritual act. That the goal of coming to sing Hallel is to feel the joy of what it is to go out from the Mitzrayim.
Right, so you're not like stopping and being grateful for
once upon a time it happened that. No, you're in the moment.
Right, and you gotta. Right, you gotta.
I think why the Haggadah is like hitting you here, it's hitting you there. It's like because as a storyteller, you never know what's going to catch someone's imagination. Like you have to be willing to throw the curveball to give the plot twist because at some point everybody gets drawn in. You know, and everybody gets drawn in different ways. That's why the whole Four Sons piece is one of the front-loaded. So that I read the Four Sons, by the way, as the instructions to the person who's giving Magi. Like, don't miss it, buddy. If you think there's only one type of person at your table, it's not going to work. You need to be speaking on 4 levels right now, right? And if that's not possible for you, so here, I'll give you a tool that will at least open those doors.
Yeah, and each one of us is a little bit smart, right?
Yeah,
and a little bit simple, and a little bit you can't ask. And which one did I miss?
The wicked.
Right.
Sure.
And come on, that's a big one.
But notice, what's the wicked son do? He puts himself outside. And that's exactly my point. Is that all the others you can draw in. But if a person willfully sets themselves outside, you can tell them the story from outside, and at least they'll have the knowledge. But you can't actually bring them in.
But I'm saying there's a certain part of us which is always outside.
Yeah.
And so speak to that Rasha part of you. Speak to, and by the way, interestingly, Rabbi Nachman really sees the Tam as the penultimate son, not the smart son, not the Chacham, not the wise son.
I mean, you know his story, the Chacham of the Tam.
Sure, it's my favorite,
and
I highly recommend it for everybody. The simpleton, what is it? The wise and the simpleton, the wise son and the simpleton.
I don't know how to translate, but yeah,
absolutely must read. But in any case, being simple, and if you notice the simple man's question, he's like, what is all this? And they tell him, God took us out in strength out of Egypt. Like the simple son asks a simple question and he gets the full picture.
Yep.
Here's the whole story right here. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay, we have 2 minutes, I guess. I just want to flash this picture here. Okay, hold on 1 second.
Good, excellent.
All right, I'm flashing a picture of the Kohen who's on top of the altar, and he is lifting ashes from the Mizbeach. This week's Torah portion is Tzav. It really deals with a lot of the physical stuff on the Mizbeach, on the altar itself. And we don't have time to go into all the stuff, but I wanted to just talk about one thing, which is that that the light of the Mizbeach, the fire of the Mizbeach was always kept burning. A fire must always be kept on the Mizbeach, right? Esh Tamid. The fire of the Mizbeach must never go out. The Kohanim must see that it burns day and night, even when there are no korbanot on the Mizbeach. If a Kohen put out the fire on the Mizbeach, he committed an Avera. The fire in the Mizbeach was always kept burning, even on Shabbat, and even while Bnei Israel were traveling in the desert. So what's that about? Why do you need a constant fire, even if you're not actually offering anything? The fire is the fire itself an offering?
Well, there's two, but don't forget that parallel to that is the Trumat Hadeshin. It's not only do you have an
that was the picture that I showed. Right?
They only do you have an obligation to keep the fire burning. You have an obligation to remove the ashes every morning. I think the two work together as a model for spiritual practice. You should know that the fire is always burning. You have to feed it, but it's an eternal thing. Whether you feel it in that moment or not, you can always return to it. But what's the key daily practice? Is you got to get rid of the ashes from yesterday. if you really want to feel that fire today, there is a process which many of us don't, I think, give enough space to, of recognizing like, yeah, there's junk that just piles up in me. And I today's a new day. I'm going to remove those ashes. That's the first spiritual practice in the temple.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want to be able to feel that eternal flame inside of you, that's the step you have to do. Every morning you wake up and say, new day.
Right. And ashes choke the fire.
Yeah.
They choke the fire. You got to know that. You got to clean out those ashes. And if you want to give that fire air, it needs air to breathe. And you're saying on a personal level, just got to, and maybe that's also why going to the bathroom is one of the most important and beautiful things. And the Rambam talks about how important it really is to excrete, get rid of that stuff, like to expel the excessive stuff, and how prayer is limited if you need to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. Yeah. You got to know how to kind of expel yesterday's energy and food. Here's the waste, put it out of your body, be clean. There's nothing like being able to pray when your bowels and all the stuff are flushed out and you're ready to be kind of without bad stuff inside, ready to serve God. And that's part of the halacha as well. Rabbi Mike Feuer, I want to thank you very much. Listen, maybe we'll try to pull out a show next week. No promises, folks, because pre-Pesach, we got to deal with this. The pressure is on. The moon aligns with Venus. The wives go absolutely crazy at this time, and that's actually part of Judaism as well.
For sure.
You become, and I've always worked for Jewish organizations. So, like for us at a Rosh Sheva, when I worked there, like for a week and a half before Pesach, you're not even called into work. Don't worry about it, because we know you have a different boss right now, and that boss is your wife, who's obviously a officer of God Himself. Wants you to clean up your house. Rabbi Mike Feuer, people can reach you at jewishstory.co, facebook.com/Rav Mike, and Rav Mike at thelandofisrael.com. You're also offering seminars right now, webinars in the Zoomverse.
I have content. If people want to send me an email, I'm happy to share.
Awesome.
Or you can find it on SoundCloud. Just look for it.
Wonderful. Okay, and you can find me also YishaiFleisher.com. I'm also giving some kind of seminar, webinar for Mizrahi tomorrow night. So that's going to be fun. So yeah, there's a lot of content out there, and I want to wish you a lot of strength, a lot of briut, health to get through this, and you and your family without killing one another. I mean, enjoying each other's company and having lots of love through this time. And as you said at the beginning of the show, using this opportunity to have the most incredible Exodus. Rabbi Mike Feuer, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
God bless you, folks. More great stuff is on the way. Malka Fleisher, maybe a kid in there. A lot of stuff is on the way, so stay tuned to the Yishai Fleisher Show. Rabbi Mike, thanks again.
Thank you.